Good morning. Monday morning, about 20 minutes to 9. Close as I can tell. Fino had left a comment, which I answered. I read all these tubes off, and the reason I did that is because, for you specifically, there are no KT88s, 12AX7s, 6550s, anything like that. There is some 6L6s. I checked some of the tubes last night. I found a bad 12BA6, totally burnt out. I tested, never put my glasses on, 6SK7 tests very good, 6C4 tested very good. There is at least one, if not two, 6L6s used in here. I'll be more than happy to send them to you because you sent me a whole box of tubes, which I made a video of a while back in exchange for some audio tubes that you wanted. So I feel I will more than happy to send them to you, the 6L6s, which in my hobby I don't use, and they are used, they are not new. So I'll be more than happy to send them to you. So I'm not going to test them on video, but I will test them. There are, let me see what this one is. Alright, this happens to be a 6L6, quite dirty, GE used. I will test these, but remember, I am using an emission tester. I do not own a mutual conductance, but it'll definitely tell you whether the tube is bad or good or it's shorted and this and that. So I'll be happy to do that for you, and I'll get back to you. It will not be done on a video. I'll just email you and let you know. If they are good, I'll have a few extra bucks. I'll be more than happy to ship it out to you at no charge for what you've done for me in the past. And that's the way I work. Okay, so this tester stays here and I will test them later on. One of my viewers asked me what I meant by a cheater cord, okay, which is what is commonly called in days of old, when men were bold and full of vim and vigor and used to pull their trigger. Never mind. A cheater cord is called that because, here's another one here, on television sets and radios, like All American 5 and so forth, when you had a back on a television, your cord was part of the back. It was clamped in. You could remove the little clamp and a lot of times take it out. Sometimes they're permanently attached with, rivets into the press board of the back. So when you took the back off the TV to service it, your power was cut. Okay? So what servicemen did, and remember the days of the television repairman coming to your house to fix your television, he would have what they call a cheater cord, which simply plugged into the wall and plugged into the jack on the chassis of your television, so we can service it. Because you can't service it with the back on, obviously. So that's why they call it cheater cord. It cheats the safety feature. That's a safety feature, so if your customer decides to take the back off, the cord comes off with it, unplugs, and therefore is not able to get in there and get hurt or killed from electric shock. So it's a safety feature, and a serviceman would have their own cheetah cord to override that so that they can power up the set, like I've done many, many times on a live chassis, reached in, because you know what you're doing, you know where you're reaching, you know, and you'll be okay if you know what you're doing. So that's why the term cheetah cord, and that's where it comes in. Okay, folks, one of my viewers also asked me on this last video I made, he wanted to hear some stories about me working at an electronic supply place called AIKINS Electronics, which I was working at in 1978. I believe I worked there for a few years. And I worked there as a counterman, and I'm pretty sure I covered all this, but there are viewers that may not have seen the video, so at the risk of repeating myself, I'm kind of going over that again. Basically, I was, like I say, I was a counterman at a place called AIKINS Electronics, which is long out of business, many, many, many years ago. I worked there, I believe it was 77, 78, maybe 79, in those years, okay? Like I say, I was a counterman, but I also was a driver to deliver electronic parts and tubes and stuff. AIKINS Electronics was a supply house for radio and television servicemen. They sold anything from spray capacitors, vacuum tubes of all brands, GE, Westinghouse, which as I recall wasn't the best vacuum tube, for the television and radio service industry, which was quite popular at that time. Also sold Channel Master antennas. There was the antennas on the roof was a big thing back in the good old analog television days. I met a lot of TV and radio repairmen that came in. I waited on the customers. I rang up their sales. I gave them the discount. The dealers always got dealer cost plus 2% off of that. I remember that. You just punch in on the calculator and put it in the register, and you know, back then most everybody paid with good old cash. There was some credit, but which we did, of course, and a lot of on account, because a TV repairman had a running account, so it just, you wrote up a slip and they signed it and they were on their way. We also had to do inventory. I had to do it. Others worked there. There was several others that worked there that had to do inventory. That was the worst part of working at AIKINS Electronics. I enjoyed working behind the counter, going to get parts. For TV man came in and he says, I want a 6 GH8 or 6AL5 or 6BQ5 or whatever, or a 6BK4 horizontal shunt regulator tube, which we went through a lot of those on color TVs. We sold a lot of those, and they were very expensive, even at dealer cost. They're lead-lined glass for the X radiation. And we sold a lot of picture tubes. Channel Master rebuilt picture tubes. We sold new picture tubes. I hated two things when I worked there. The inventory, I hate doing inventory because there was phone calls that came in from dealers that we had to answer. even if we were in the middle of counting in the back room or on the side where all the racks are. I should really say on the side, it wasn't in the back room, but it was in back of the counter, rows and rows of shelving where the parts are, tubes and Amphenol connectors and switchcraft connectors. We sold a lot of switchcraft. And these phone would ring when we're counting whoever was doing the inventory. And you'd have to drop the count. You'd have to write it down and stop. And I hated that because I'm in the middle of counting something. You're counting a bin with 100 switchcraft and you're down, you're counting them and you got to drop everything and answer the phone. And they got very impatient in the office if you did not pick up the phone. They would call over the PA and they would say, Bill, I'm not going to mention my last name, line 5. Line 5 was West Haven, Connecticut, Aikins Electronics. We were the main supplier for the West Haven store, the Norwich store, and I believe there was one other one, I don't recall. So line 4 was Norwich, line 5 was West Haven. I did not like getting calls from West Haven because Ernie, who was the manager of the West Haven store, I've met him, he talked so soft, and I had better hearing than very soft. I had a heck of a time hearing him, on the phone. And he would talk a little fast. I don't like fast talkers. I like to talk slow so you can hear what the person says. He'd rattle off a list and I'm trying to write them down, boom, 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 And if you didn't answer the phone on the third page, because you're in the middle of counting, they got angry and Mr. Aikins would come out and give you a cold look. Never forgot that. He was a quiet guy. He didn't say much. But if you didn't answer the phone right away, he'd come out and say, what, he wouldn't say anything. He'd look in the doorway from the office. There was a lady there that would run the, take the phone calls. There was a couple of women there, I believe, that worked in the office. And each of us on the counter would usually answer whatever line and they would call. So, Ernie from West Haven would require, would call from me to take the order. So I want Bill to take the order. Okay. So that's how that came about. Or the Norwich store on line 4 would want me to take the order. So that's how they knew in the office, because the calls would go in the office, and they would page it out there. Or the calls would come in at the counter, and one of us would have to answer it. So you had to do that, and you had to answer the phones number 1, even if you're waiting on a customer. I did not like that. That's one of the things I did not like. That, counting inventory and unloading the Channel Master truck, which came in, I think, with picture tubes every 2 weeks. Oh, Channel Master rotors, Channel Master radios. I hated to unload the Channel Master truck. Me and one other guy would get stuck doing that. Not all the time. Sometimes they'd keep me on the counter, and we had several guys there. And we had another fella who used to do CB radios. His first name was Howie. Haven't seen him in years. And he was an expert on CBs. So there was a little section off to the side that everybody went to Howie because he was the CB expert. We sold a lot of CB radios back then. And we sold some stereos, inexpensive stereos. They had a room off to the side. They sold stereos and record players and stuff like that. This was late 70s. So I enjoyed working there. I got all parts that I ordered from my hobby and tubes at dealer cost plus 2% off. That 2% don't sound like much, but that's what they did. And and I remember VHS videotapes, the RCA brand we sold was $16 for a one tape. So they were expensive. My first VCR was a, I can't remember, RCA Selectavision, top loaded. It cost me $1,100 on time payments that I bought from a place in Groton called Francis Electronics. Joe Francis ran the place. I was working at Aikins. They knew me very well, and I got to take it home and pay Francis Electronics so much a week out of my pay until the $1,100 was paid off. It took quite a while. So it gave me credit on that to the store. It's store credit, not no finance company. That's when businesses would, they'll let you take stuff and pay off. Same with Aikins. I bought a on-time payments back then. I was in CB from 73 to probably 78 or thereabouts. I bought a Midland 13885 single sideband CB radio with chrome on it. You know, it was pretty nice, impressive. I think it was $300 and some. I paid it so much a week out of my pay at Aikins, and they let me take it home. That's the only way I was able to afford it. So it was a good place to work for, you know. And I got along with everybody, and you know, I met a lot of TV and radio guys. Learned a lot, picked their brains. And some of them, most of them were okay. I had one that was gave me a bad time because I didn't understand what he said, and when I, you know, I didn't like the guy at all. He got upset with me because I asked the question again. If I don't understand something, I'll ask it again. You know, you mean this or that? And he got short with me, and his first name was John. I know his last name. I'll never repeat it again. He's probably dead now anyways. But I didn't like him, and when I waited on him, it was all business, and, you know, no hello, John, or anything like that. But everybody except him was very good. I met two pushers, guys that didn't know too much. I know I'd come in, some guys would come in, they're experts. Even my buddy Nate Carver would come in and buy something. He got dealer costs. Everybody that was a dealer came in, whether they were simple television radio man or whatever. Some were just putting up antennas, and that's all they did. So we did everything, you know. And when it was my turn to deliver by way of the truck, what they would do is you got your order that, let's say West Haven called in an order, okay? I took the order, and I didn't mind driving to West Haven. That was from New London to West Haven. Back then, I had excellent eyesight, you know, and I didn't mind the traffic, and the traffic wasn't as bad as it is these days. So I used to love going up there. It got me out of the store and, you know, get away from inventory. So you'd have this order sheet, and you would load up your own truck. Then the manager would come and go in the truck and itemize everything. So they want to make sure everything was honest. Nobody put stuff in there that don't belong in there. In other words, it's all proper. So there's but nobody's stealing anything. So they itemize what you're on the list, what you're supposed to have on the truck, and you were good to go. And you went. Towards the end, they were timing you, which I didn't like, because I like to stop and get a coffee, and a lot of guys do. You know, they used to stop and BS with, you know, stop at their friends or whatever. You know, so you had a time. They figured you had so much time to get to West Haven or Norwich or wherever you were going. And when you got there, they knew about how long it would take you to get there, and then coming back, and if you stop for gas, which you usually don't have to, you're driving a Ford Econoline, that's what they used. You know, so they knew when you're going to come back, so if you got other stops along the way. Like if you're going to West Haven, you had other stops along the way. You stopped at different TV shops along the way. If you were going to West Haven, you'd stop at Essex TV radio service or whatever in Essex, Connecticut. You'd stop along those places. It wasn't just a clear shot going on 95, you know. So that's how that was. But you had to come back, of course, with a reasonable at the time. Otherwise, it's questionable. And they wonder what you're doing. You can't just spend an hour in a coffee shop. I love stopping for coffee. I always did. I like to take a break. I like to stretch my legs, and I enjoy that. Not just the way it is. I do look forward to my coffee. Not so much the coffee as the break and to get away, to change of pace. So it was a good place to work. Also, I got whatever equipment I bought. I got dealer cost on the equipment. We carried Sencor and a few other brands I can't remember. We carried B&K and so forth, and Leader, and stuff like that. So when the Sencor representative come in, and I've gotten some deals by way of the Sencor rep, a certain item was not selling good on the floor at Aikins, he was authorized to knock the price down 10% or whatever it is, on whatever it is. So I've gotten several pieces of test equipment, TV repair test equipment, which is of no value to me nowadays, like a B&K sweep circuit analyzer, which put in the sweep of the horizontal sweep. It generated all that. I got that at a good deal and only used it a couple of times on TVs. And various other pieces of equipment, including Sencor dot and bar generator, I got fairly cheap. By each time their representative come in, it was still sitting on the floor. He'd authorize me with the okay from Aikins to mark down the price of such and such a piece of equipment down so much. As it sits and as the weeks and months go by, it got to a point where it was so reasonable that if I wanted it, I could get it, or anybody else could get it. So that's the way that worked. So it was a real good benefit for my hobby. At the time, of course, I was living in New London, half a mile from Aikins on Broad Street, so where Aikins was located at the time. I had attic workshops. I had plenty of room up there, so a lot of that equipment at that time came from there. But most of my stuff came from ham auctions, the older stuff. So it was good. It was. I got my solder from Aikins. Anything I needed, tools, belts for cassettes, idler wheels for record changers and stuff. I did a little of that, but I was never good at working on record changers with the mechanics of it. I was not very good at that. So, but I did putter around a little bit. Did many phono cartridges and stuff, and things like that. We used to sell a lot of phono cartridges, static cartridges, and needles, and so on and so forth. So I think in closing, I've spoken a long time. I'm using HD, so it's probably going to be a big file size. I'm using a regular tripod here. So I enjoyed working there, and it was one of my favorite places to work because I was in around electronics. I even bought scanners over there. Bearcat, my first programmable scanner was a Bearcat 210. Last year there was a couple of them for $10 a piece at the at the ham auction, 2019, for dirt cheap. Bearcat 210s were okay, but they had a lot of what they call birdies in them. There was a lot of doubles in frequency, and they were okay, but like I say, they had a lot of birdies, so you had a lot of images of the same frequency and other parts of the spectrum that on the band you were listening to. But back then, everything was good old analog. So, you could get, well, you couldn't get your cell phones on that, of course. But because cell phones were analog then, but those scanners had that band locked out. But that was my first. It was a big deal getting a programmable scanner. We're talking 1978 now, and I was heavily into the hobby, of course, and I was also going to ham auctions. And got a lot of deals with my test equipment that was in the workshop. Like a lot of that stuff, the older stuff, came from ham auctions, because even though it was a ham auction, there was some television service equipment there also. Guys would bring in stuff, but most of it was ham radio related. My leader, LVO 526, which is right here, I got that at a ham auction in, I believe, the late 90s, not sure. At that time I had like $50 in my pocket. It went for $50, and it works very, very well. And it's the one piece of equipment that I bought it back from Mike. I had sold it to Mike, my buddy, and I bought it back from him. He didn't really use it, but he did calibrate it for me. I haven't heard from Mike. As last I knew, he had to have open heart surgery. One of his valves weren't working right. But since this corona crap came out, I have not seen him at all or heard from him. So I have no idea if he's still around. Hopefully he is. I have no way of getting a hold of him. He is or was on ham radio, but he is on like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm not. I get up at 6 or a little after 6. It's dark now in the morning at 6 a.m. The daylight used to wake me up, and I've been ready to go. I have a hell of a time getting up in the morning now.